Welcome to the third session of my class. In the previous class, we have studied regarding the different components of a motherboard. Now, the last component which we are going to study in today's class is bus. As we have studied in the previous class, on the printed circuit board, we are mounted different components and different ports or different slots we have placed on the motherboard. But once the hardware cards are been placed on the motherboard, they have to be communicate between each other to exchange the data or an instruction or a signal between each component. Therefore, different components on the computer like memory, CPU and input-output units are connected via a bus. Then what is this bus? The bus is a collection of parallel wires or electrical wires which forms a pathway to communicate between the address, data and the control signal. This bus is an electronic wires which interconnect each component to carry the data or instruction from one component to another component. What are the feature of this bus? The feature is a bus is a set of wires which carries one bit of each wire. Each wire carries a one bit which transfer from one component to another component. Second one, the speed, that is the bandwidth of the bus can be determined based on the number of wires present in that bus. As the number of wires increases, the speed of the transformation of a data will be more because each wire carries one bit at a time. Therefore, as the number of wires increases in the bus, the speed of the data transformation and the number of bit which we are going to transfer will be more. Therefore, the bus is an electronic wire which is used to interconnect the components on the motherboard to make an exchange of or to transfer the data or instruction or any signal from one component to another component. Therefore, the electric wire which is called as a bus which we are using in our computer are classified into two types, that is internal bus and external bus. This external bus is also called as expansion bus. Why we are going to call those that as an expansion bus? Later I will be going to say. First let us study what is internal bus. The internal bus is nothing but where the bus is going to connect the major component of our system like processor, memory and input-output ports. This is a major components which we are mounted on the motherboard and which we are using to perform the task by exchanging or by transferring the data or instruction. This internal bus is going to connect these major components. Therefore, these type of buses are called as a system bus also we are going to call, because it is an interlink inside the computer or interlink inside the motherboard which we are going to connect the different components. Now, but sometime we required to add on the additional devices and improvise the capability of our computer. Therefore, we are going to use an external bus to connect the external other devices like expansion port, input port, like a CD drive or a hard disk, flash drive. We are going to connect an additional external devices. To connect those devices, we are going to use an electrical cable which is called as external bus. By adding these components, we can able to increase the capabilities. We can able to increase the capabilities of our computer. Therefore, these type of bus are called as an expansion bus we are going to call. Here, we can able to connect so many components. Whatever the internal bus or an external bus, or both buses is having the comprise of a three kind of control of the bus, that is a data bus and address bus and control bus. These are the three kinds of comprise which we are available in both system bus as well as expansion bus. What is this data bus? Data bus is nothing but it is an interconnection between the CPU and the memory. It is interconnected between the CPU and the memory, which is have the capacity to transfer the data lines of 16-bit, 32-bit, 128 lines of wire is available. Therefore, you can able to transfer 16-bit of data if it is a 16 lines of wire, and 32-bit of data if it is 32 lines, and 128-bit if it is 128 lines. As the number of electrical wire increases, that is data bus wire lines has been increased, the processing speed will be increased. Therefore, if your line is 16-bit, if you want to transfer a 16-bit of data, then you require a 16 lines of wire is required. The speed of this data bus is always measured by megahertz. The data bus, the speed bandwidth of the data bus is always measured by a megahertz we are going to measure. Next, address bus. The address bus is interconnected or connected between CPU and the RAM, which is used to identify the maximum number of location that what my computer can able to address. That is, it can be able to get connect the maximum number of address which it can be able to get connect to transfer the data from a CPU to RAM, which we are going to use. Next is the control bus, which is used to control the access, and that is used to control the data and the instructions. That is, the control bus is going to control the accessing, that is user can access both data as well as address bus. While accessing this data bus and the address bus, this control bus will be going to monitor whether the authorized person is going to access or not. This is the three comprise which we are able to see within these two buses. Clear? These are the two buses. Be careful, this is an important question. In the examination they are going to ask what is bus and the types of bus. The bus is nothing but an electronic wire or a parallel wires which forms the pathway to the data, address and the control signal to carry the data or instruction from one component to the another component. Feature, since it carries one bit at a time, it depends upon the number of lines. If you want to transfer a 16-bit, 16 set of lines of wires has to be used to transfer those bits. Since it carries one bit at a time, each wire carries one bit. Therefore, the bandwidth of the bus can be defined as the number of wires which we are going to use to transfer the data or a instruction. Next, the types is the internal and external bus. Okay, we have seen that the data and the instruction can be transferred between the different components via a bus. Now, the major component other than these components which we have seen on the motherboard, the memory is the main component which is required for our computer to store the data and instruction which can be able to use in future. Therefore, what is this memory? The memory is an electronic storage space which is used to store the data and instructions. Since whatever the CPU storage it is there, it's very small and expensive. Therefore, we cannot able to use these memories to store each and every data or instruction, because initially we have to store the application or a program which is related for the processor and the motherboard. Therefore, since the memory is being classified into two types, one is internal memory, another one is secondary memory. In this year, you are going to study only regarding the internal memory. because the internal memory is the small capacity of a memory which is stores the programs related to our computer, and it is very expensive also. Since we cannot able to load all the required data and instruction, we have adopted another type of memory which is called as an secondary memory, also it is called as an external memory. This year we are not going to study the secondary memory or an external memory, completely we are going to study regarding the internal memory. What is this internal memory? Internal memories are classified into three types, that is called as register, cache memory and the primary memory. These memories are temporary in nature of temporarily it stores the data and instructions. These memories are very small in size and these memories are temporary in nature. These memories are very expensive. These memories are used to store the data temporarily which required by the processor, which holds the data or instruction which is required by the processor to make the processor to be process the data or instruction very quickly. The feature of these three type of internal memories are temporary in nature, high cost, limited storage and small capacity of storage space it is available. These are the features which comes under the internal memory. Let us study one by one regarding the types of internal memory. The register. The register is the small capacity of a storage which is placed inside the CPU. This register memory which is placed inside the CPU, which is very small capacity of a memory which is available. This register will get the information which is provided by the CPU. CPU will be going to access the data or instruction from the RAM and provide for the register. The register will receive those data and instructions and process according to the instruction given by the control unit. By using the data and instruction, this can be able to perform arithmetic and logic unit, and it can also be perform the transferring of a data, and also it is performing the storing of data and exchanging of data between the different components of a computer. It's a small capacity and temporary in nature, keep it in mind. Next, we are having a second type of internal memory which is called as a cache memory. This cache memory is also pronounced as cache memory. This is a high speed memory which is going to store the data which is oftenly used, most oftenly used by the CPU. Those data will be stored in this cache memory. This cache memory is very high speed memory and which is temporary in nature. Since initially the CPU will be going to search the related data which is most often be used. Those data, the CPU will be going to search those data in the cache memory. If the data is not available in the cache memory, then it is going to move for the RAM. Therefore, it is in a small size and the fast execution of a data transformation. Very expensive memory. This cache memory is very expensive. Now, this cache memory in our CPU, we are having different types. L1 cache memory, L2 cache memory. The L1 is placed inside the processor, L2 is placed outside the processor on the motherboard. These L1 and L2 cache memory has been placed in our CPU. In today's computers like Intel Core, Quad Core, i3, i7, motherboard and all is available L3 cache memory also. These memories will be available in 256 KB, 600 KB, like different size this cache memory is available. Very important question. The cache memory is the high speed memory which is used to access the data very fast, which the CPU can be processed, and these cache memory will be holding the data which are most often used by the processor. Clear? Initially this cache CPU will be going to search the data in the cache memory. If the related data is not available, then it is going to move and find those data in the RAM. L1, L2, L3 are the three types of cache memory available in the market, but L1 is placed on the processor, L2 is placed outside the processor, but on the motherboard it has been placed. After studying this cache memory, let us go for a primary memory. The primary memory is also called as a main memory, which stores the set of instructions which is related to our system. Whether it can be operating system, whether it can be any application program related to my system which it is going to hold. That's why this primary memory is also called as a main memory. This primary memory is classified into two types, that is RAM and ROM. What is this RAM? RAM stands for Random Access Memory, which stores the data or a instruction of operating system and application program related to my computer. And this RAM is a volatile in nature. That means when the power is off, when your system is off, whatever the data which you are going to store inside the RAM, that all the data will be erased. It will be not erased, the data will be not available. Such type of memory is called as RAM memory. This is especially to load the operating system and related application program to our computer to make the CPU to be processed very fast. The second type of primary memory is ROM. What is this ROM? ROM stands for Random Access Read Only Memory. ROM stands for Read Only Memory, which stores the programs which are related to the boot firmware, which is nothing but called as BIOS. The BIOS is a set of instruction which makes the CPU to get activate and checks the hardware whether the hardware are working properly or not. And also this ROM is going to load the operating system during the time of boot system. Okay, when you are booting your system, this ROM is going to load the operating system to the RAM. This ROM will be going to load the operating system to the ROM. Therefore, this ROM is a non-volatile in nature. That means the data remains even when your system is off. The data which is present on the ROM will be available even your system is off. This is main two type of primary memory which is available on our computer. This RAM, especially RAM, because in the RAM only the data transformation process will be taken place more. Therefore, the types of RAMs are DRAM. What is this DRAM? DRAM stands for a dynamic RAM. This dynamic RAM is a smaller, oldest model of memory chip which we are going to use, which is smaller in size and expensive. In this memory chip, we are using transistor and capacitor. The transistors are arranged in a matrix form of rows and the columns. The capacitor are used to check the data bits of zeros and ones. The combination of these both transistor and the capacitor are paired to form a memory cell. The transistor and capacitors are paired to form a memory cell. This DRAM is always we have to be refreshed, since it is a small capacity and a low processing of transforming. Therefore, each and every minute we have to refresh this memory chip to reload the data or instruction which is not transferred properly. Therefore, the speed of the data transfer in the DRAM memory chip is 5 to 150 nanosecond. It takes 5 to 150 nanoseconds to transfer the data between one component to another component, but it required every now and then the refreshing of this memory chip is required. Therefore, we have adopted a next new chip called as SRAM. That is static RAM we are going to call. This static RAM is going to use a group of transistors like 4 to 6 transistors to frame a memory cell. One memory cell will consist of a 4 to 6 transistor and it does not consist any capacitor. Only transistors are used to frame a memory cell. This is a speed of SRAM is more compared to this DRAM. Speed of SRAM is more compared to the DRAM, where it can be able to process the transfer of a data in a 2 to 10 nanoseconds. The time also has been reduced. It is a smaller size where very fast it can be able to transfer the data between CPU and the RAM. The speed of the SRAM is 2 to 10 nanoseconds. But since the time what we are using to transfer the data between CPU and RAM, the CPU has to wait until what is the next instruction that RAM is going to provide. To avoid that waiting time, we have introduced a new memory chip which is called as SDRAM, Synchronization Dynamic RAM. Synchronization Dynamic RAM. Since this memory chip has been synchronized to our system clock, this SDRAM has been synchronized to my system clock, this can be able to prepare what next cycle my CPU has to be executed. This SDRAM provides the next instruction which has to be executed, that is to be provided for the CPU. Therefore, no need of waiting by the CPU what is the next cycle or next instruction has to be executed. Therefore, the processing speed will be more compared to these two, because the instruction of the cycle will be get ready what the CPU has to be executed before the CPU is going to wait until the RAM provides the instructions. The fourth one is DDR-RAM. This is called as double data rate RAM, DDR, double data rate RAM, which is double the data which these three can be able to transfer. This can be transferred initially. Therefore, this is the high speed data transformation which is used by this RAM. Very fast the data will be exchanged between RAM and the CPU compared to these three. These are the 4 types of RAM which is used in our RAM slot in the primary memory. Is it clear? Primary memory is a main memory which is used to store the system related programs and applications. The primary memory is classified into 2 types, RAM and ROM. This year you are having only regarding the RAM. In the first year we have studied regarding the ROM, PROM, EPROM, EEPROM, like that. This year we are going to study regarding the types of RAM. The RAM is mainly used to store the operating system and the application program related data and instructions. This is very volatile in nature. That means the data is lost. Data will be available unless your system is on. Once the system is off, then your data will be lost. Next is ROM, which stores the BIOS related programs and additional programs. This BIOS chip will consist of a set of programs which is provided for the CPU to check the activity of the hardware, and also this ROM will be going to load the operating system for the RAM. This ROM will load the operating system for the RAM while booting your system. Well, boot sector system is going to work on that time. It is going to store. It will be a non-volatile in nature. That means the data will be available even when your system is off. Even when system is off, your data will be available. And also we have seen the different types of RAM which we are used to transfer the data between one. Here transistor and capacitors are used to frame the memory cell. Here refreshing is required now and then. Here only transistors are used. Here no refreshing is required now and then, because the transformation of data can be done easily with a high speed rate. Here, since synchronization, my chip has been synchronized to my system clock, the data of cycle is been arranged in a proper way. It can avoid the waiting of the CPU. The CPU can be easily accessed and process the job very fast. This is double the data, where the double the data which we can able to transfer between CPU and RAM. Okay, today we will be going to wind it up this class. In the next class, we are going to study regarding the structure of CPU and the power supply which is required for different components in my computer. Thank you. Have a nice day.